Here.
Andrew Choi, not here. Emma Wormser, not here yet. Said she was going to be late. Daryl Brewer, no. Pat Sheehan,
Here.
Charmaine Todman-Nwanji, and Marcela Moreno.
Present.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, a motion we approve the agenda as presented. Is anyone opposed? Hearing none, we'll take the agenda approved as presented. We'll now move on to public comment. Are there any members of the public that would like either in person or virtually to make a comment in front of the Riders Advisory Council?
Oh, John, I'd try. This is Phil.
Hey, Phil.
On the phone.
Yep, you're good.
Super.
Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Hearing or seeing none, I will close. Oh, sorry. Oh, Phil, would you like to say something?
Oh, sure. Just a heads up for budget time. The general manager's draft budget is now posted on the website and will be presented in person at tomorrow's Operations Finance Committee meeting. And y'all might want to take a look at it, both the operational budget and the capital budget. The operational budget does some good things and some questionable things. But the major thing on fares are the attempt to simplify the fares and to give some aid to low-income passengers on bus and rail. And that's where the problem comes in. They are simplifying it by eliminating peak and non-peak fares. There'll just be one fare, and they haven't come up with a number yet. But they think the number they come up with will be 5% higher than the mean or the average of the peak and the non-peak. And so that's okay. There's going to be a 5% increase for regular passengers. For low-income people, what they are proposing is anyone on SNAP receiving federal aid through SNAP can register, and then they will receive the same discount as seniors and people with disabilities. And that's very nice. It's just making me assume that all the people who are low income are receiving SNAP. And I think that's an overassumption. I think there are a lot of low income people that are not receiving SNAP. In addition to that, they are proposing that Metro Access fares be calculated at twice the equivalent fare for bus or rail. However, the problem is by increasing the fares by 5%, the fares on Metro Access are going to be increased by 10%. So people with disabilities, many of whom are seniors and many of whom are low income, will actually be having their fares elevated by this plan. And so I think they need to do a little massaging and find out who really is low income and how to protect the people that are low income on Metro Access. The other problem is the idea of simplifying the fares makes it even more complicated for Metro Access. So once again, we have a budget that's been put through that looks only at bus and rail. It doesn't pay any attention at all to Metro Access, but does manage to make it more difficult for people to use. So that's it. Those are my comments, and I think it's important for the RAC to look at that budget. It's online. Don't just read what they have in the Washington Post and TOP and the local newspapers. You guys need to dive into the budget and take a look at what they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil, for your comment. We have some pre-submitted comments. John.
Sure. So as they say, we get emails. So I wanted to read through a couple emails that came into the RAC's account that then we can address. The first is from Mary Ellen Dabrowski. I am a longtime resident of Crystal City. I am also a New Yorker before moving here for a job. I am so frustrated by Metro here in DC.
We can't hear you, John.
Try again. Can you hear me now, Brenna? Let's try it. Can you hear me now?
It says the boardroom audio is muted on Teams.
Now?
Yep.
All right. I heard the echo of myself. Sorry. Thank you. So this came in from Mary Ellen Dobrowolski. I'm a longtime resident of Crystal City. I'm also a New Yorker before moving here for a job. I am so frustrated by the Metro here in DC. I'm used to a very different subway system. I'm a huge supporter of public transportation. Metro has a lot of pluses over the New York City subway. Cleanliness, elevators, and escalators easily found at every station, to name two examples. My frustration, however, is the hours the Metro runs. It should run 24 hours or close to it. When I travel, I take early flights. Metro doesn't run early enough to either DCA or Dulles. Please do not remove the 5A bus for this reason. I would like to take a job as a ticket agent at either airport, but Metro does not run early or late enough to support this. There are many people in this area who work at airports, hospitals, and other areas with around-the-clock shifts. Metro is not an option for them. I believe ridership would increase if hours were extended. Also, I'd like to see a flat rate fare all the time throughout the system. Has anyone ever compared what Metro brings in with the fare system presently in place versus a flat fare? Has anyone compared the cost for all the programming to implement the present fare system versus a flat rate fare, which would require much less programming? Thank you for your consideration of these matters. Next is from Niharika Naik Dungal. I love mass transit, but it's frustrating when schedules are not updated online and you run late for work. This happens a lot, and I finally decided to speak up. Next is from Devika McWalters. This is our final comment of the evening. Dear council members, I'm writing to request that the S1 bus service be restored now that workers have returned to work. The World Bank and IMF are large institutions whose employees are not only encouraged, but are committed to without the S1, there is no efficient way to get to these institutions or to the State Department from 16th Street. Before the pandemic, I relied on the S1 for more than 12 years as a quick and convenient form of transportation to work. Even so, buses arriving between 8:30 and 9 a.m. were often so crowded, they skipped over stops between U and P streets, leaving riders there with no choice but to drive or take expensive Ubers or taxis if they could find one, if they didn't have time to walk to work between buses. Former riders of the S1 buses are forced to use these same options now. The S and 52 buses both require at least a 20-minute walk, more than half my commute, or an inconvenient connection to get to the work. And they too often skip over riders between P and U streets in rush hour. If the S1 full service cannot be restored, please consider a Monday-Thursday express rush hour service from 16th Street in Mount Pleasant going to the World Bank, IMF, and the State Department and back. Thank you in advance for your consideration. Okay, that concludes our public comments.
Okay, thank you. With no other public comment, we'll move on to our first presentation of the evening. We have a discussion about Metro Strategic Transformation Plan, and we have the Strategic Transformation Project Manager and a staff member, Kimberly, to come talk to us. So I'll hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So we are underway with the strategic transformation planning process. It is best practice to update a strategic plan every 3 to 5 years, but also here at WMATA, per our funding agreement with the Commonwealth of Virginia, we do have to update it every 3.5 years. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Excuse me. The last couple of months, we've been developing a document that will, ultimately not just live on a shelf, but to guide long-term strategy and day-to-day decision-making over the next 5+ years for Metro. It has been hand-in-hand developed with the board, along with our customers, staff, and the community, including external stakeholders, regional partners, to gather input and help shape a robust and customer-centric strategic plan that we would like to see adopted in the winter of 2023. You see the elements around the screen are just the various inputs that have gone into the plan to make sure that we are truly driving the needs of the community, of our customers, of our staff, and our regional partners. So we've conducted surveys with both staff and customers, looking at performance data, both historical that we've used, and also how we can revamp that to provide more transparent dashboards that help us drive decision-making and provide information to our customers. We're looking at our social media data while recognizing that Twitter, Instagram can be somewhat of an echo chamber. It's important to understand the sentiment that we're hearing from our customers online. We've conducted interviews with the board members and then staff across the entire organization, from station managers, operators, janitorial staff, data analysts, and the executive team. Did I say board members? I can't remember. But also board members, if I didn't say that. We've conducted several community forums over the last few months out on bus stops and station platforms, meeting customers in the moment, understanding what their experience is like in that journey and that day, but also their tenure of using the system and how they would like to see Metro serve them better. We've conducted several workshops with the board and with staff to continue developing this plan and also to help shift the dynamic of how the board and staff work together to create one metro. We've looked at prior studies and reports to understand, where we're falling short or where we're still working through efforts of past goals and objectives. And then also conducting several staff forums, so whether that is staff-wide town halls, going out into various facilities at Metro, and also independent staff meetings to hear what the day-to-day is like for each department at Metro. Next slide, please. So you see on the right here are the core values that have been established for Metro, and these will drive everything that we do. So everything at Metro is done to be with safety in mind. It is equity-focused, customer-centric, ethical, and innovative. And with the board, we've established what the mission is for Metro, and that is your Metro, connecting you to possibilities, and identified a vision of the region's trusted way to move more people safely and sustainably. And the goals that are our priorities to achieve this vision are service excellence, regional opportunity and partnership, sustainability, and talented teams. And I'll go into those in a little bit more detail in a few slides. So like I said, that this has been intentionally driven by input from the community, from our customers, from our stakeholders, from the board, and from staff. And so that we've phased it into about 4 different community engagement efforts. And so back in August and September is when we started the surveys, understanding what the staff and community needs are as we start to develop the architecture of what the plan would look like going forward. Sure that we're addressing those and the future needs. In October, through back initial themes of what we heard and sharing that feedback loop with our partners to make sure that we captured what we thought we heard. And that includes being transparent, collaboratively deciding what metrics should look like, should measure those metrics, and how we should convey those metrics. And then in January and February is when we want to start to socialize the plan. We will be going out in February for a public hearing, and then incorporating feedback into the final plan that we will propose for adoption to the board of directors at the end of February. And then after that, once the plan is adopted, this is meant to be an iterative process and a living document as we identify different mechanisms and ways to measure and report on progress against the plan. So data and stakeholder input has led to initial themes that ultimately developed these 4 goals that you see on the screen. So service excellence, what we heard from our customers and from our staff is that they want safe, reliable, convenient, enjoyable service. We realize that Metro is, the thread of the community and that it leads people to jobs, it leads people to opportunities. So making sure that regional opportunity and partnership is a key goal for the strategic plan. And then when we talk about sustainability, we're looking at it through 2 different lenses, and that's a financial model, but also an environmental model. And realizing that the long-term fiscal constraints of Metro are not sustainable. So it is our goal to change that. And then also realizing that Metro plays a key part in the region's sustainability goals. So identifying initiatives to lower our greenhouse gases is a way that we can contribute to that. And then talented teams want to make sure that we're attracting top talent and providing a place to work for our staff where they feel valued, where we can develop their careers, and where they feel supported and proud of their contributions at Metro. Each emerging goal is supported by objectives that we'll talk a little bit more in detail on the next couple slides, but ultimately how we'll measure our progress against the plan. And so we'll have high-level metrics that will, deliver the goals, but the objectives really hone in on the details. And actually, the presentation that's following mine will go into a lot more detail about performance reporting and how we'll do that in the future, or how we do it now and in the future. Yeah. No, you're good. Thank you. So on this slide, I know it's the #1 rule of PowerPoint presentations is a lot of text, but it's really important to capture, how we want to deliver the plan. Again, this is not a plan that's going to sit on the shelf, but we want to identify metrics that are realistic, but also that are ways that we feel comfortable measuring and are able to share with the public, share with the board, share internally to help deliver and develop, products that are internal and external to ultimately deliver better service. So when we're looking at service excellence, it's pretty obvious. We want customer satisfaction across all modes to increase. And how do we do that? Well, we've identified objectives and metrics below there to ultimately deliver that. Next slide. And then this slide is, again, it's not exhaustive, but as, the board and staff and senior staff really help drive, the mission, vision, and goals and objectives. It is now, staff that is going to take these, identify initiatives to develop them and implement them. And so to achieve those goals and objectives, we've started a list here of initiatives that can be met in, the next 6 to 18 months, but also some probably not for the next 5 to 10 years. And this will be an ongoing iterative list. But for instance, on service excellence, how are we going to repair and modernize infrastructure equipment to meet the needs of technology, to meet the needs of our community now, and talented teams, strategic workforce planning. Like I said, without a good staff, we cannot provide good service. And so it's really important for us to invest in that as an employer. Regional opportunity and partnership. We've already kicked off Better Bus Network redesign, but also looking to do something similar with Metro Rail service optimization. Coming out of the pandemic, there's no better time than now than to look at how mobility patterns have changed and how we can maximize our infrastructure to meet those needs of the community and those changes. And then on the sustainability side, again, both financial and environmental, looking at dedicated, ongoing regional, non-fare, non-subsidy funding streams, and then decarbonizing Metro. Next slide. And so in summary, Your Metro, the way forward, that is the official title of the strategic plan. This just summarizes, what we went through, but the values that are the core foundation of our organization, the mission, vision, goals, objectives, and then there at the bottom is really the meat of the plan, is identifying the metrics that can hold Metro accountable, how we do our board reporting and public-facing dashboards to stay accountable and also to deliver better service. So the questions that I posed up here, if nobody had any questions, but I'm happy to take any questions, but also just, wanting feedback now as we're in this process. We are, kind of on the stakeholder roadshow, if you will, and for the next couple of weeks, meeting with elected officials and other agency advocates, as well as having a public meeting next week. And as we start to incorporate feedback from all these conversations, and then we'll finalize and to do a public hearing early next year.
Thank you very much, Kimmy. We greatly appreciate it. Does anyone have any
Hey, Brian.
responses to that? Yes, Pat.
Brian, yeah, I even raised my hand using all the protocols correctly, I hope.
Pat.
Thank you, Brian. Kimberly, you gave this presentation to the AAC committee a couple of days ago. I want to ask the same question here that I asked at my meeting. The RAC received a presentation last month that was very good, talking about strategic initiatives, dealing with fare and with particularly bus rail system, operational things like, turnbacks for the red line, I think at the yellow line, and different things like that, fare simplification or fare options with things like 5 zones, whether they were good or bad. They made some recommendations moving forward and all of that. And this month this month we're talking about this strategic plan. When I asked you on Monday about this, you said that what the RAC received last month was kind of a subset of what you're showing tonight. Could you go into that a little bit? I think it would be good for them to be able to connect the dots between what they saw last month, which I'm sure you're aware of, and then what you're showing this month. They're not in conflict, really. One is a subset of the other, as I see it.
Yep, that's exactly right. Oh, I'm getting that better? Can you hear me on the?
Yeah, I can hear you
Okay,
fine.
great. Yeah, so I mean, you're exactly right. This strategic plan is really from an enterprise-wide perspective, and grounding us as an organization, identifying that North Star, so that, if we have a million priorities, we have no priorities. And so using data that's collected through input from the community, from our stakeholders, from our writers, from our staff, that really helps us identify a baseline of understanding of where we are, some pulse checks, and then identifying that helped develop the goals. And then, so now going forward, if anything that we're doing at Metro does not fit to serve or to achieve one of those goals, then we're not going to do it. And so then the initiatives list that are in the future, and some of the ones that you just listed are underway, and they do strive to meet those goals. They strive to meet our regional partnership and opportunity goals, our equity goals, our service excellence goals. And so those are rather initiatives that will help us achieve Metro's mission and vision.
I would like to go just one more layer deeper, expanding on what Pat said. So this is nice, but none of this happens without it being funded. So is it safe to assume that either the FY24 budget, although this is not complete, had a lot of this in mind, and will future budgets, I can't believe I just said FY25 budget, I'm so sorry, that's so far in the future, theoretically should be created with this at the forefront?
Exactly. So now, some of these are programmed and funded in fiscal year 24, but now moving forward, we will, everything that we do, including the budget, this is us going out to the community saying, what is it that you want Metro to do, and who do you want Metro to be, or what do you want Metro to be? And then our budget process will be figuring out how to fund those. And so that this will be our strategic plan that we can point to and say, this is what, when we consulted our regional partners, be that elected officials or funding partners, our customers, our staff, this is very driven by the community.
And I just have one comment. Thank you so much for making one of the goals being talented teams. The other ones are intuitive. Service excellence is, I think, very apparent, but I think the necessity to keep, retain, and strengthen our human resources is so vital, because our operators, our engineers, our administrators, they're the ones that keep this system going, serving us all. And I think any budget or strategic initiative beyond that needs to reflect that accordingly.
Thank you for your comment.
Are there any other comments? Phil? Phil?
Phil, you're muted if
muted.
you're speaking.
No, I'm unmuted now. Playing off Ryan's comment on talented teams, I think it's critical that talented teams talk to one another, that they not be a talented team in a silo and not know what anyone else is doing, so that the bus people don't know what the rail people are doing. The rail people don't know what the Metro Access people are doing. The signage people for rail don't know what the signage people for bus are doing. So I think communication, and interactions are critical with the teams.
Yeah, thank you for that comment, and couldn't agree more. We're working very hard to break down silos and make sure that we're working across the entire enterprise to meet the needs of our community through our organization. But really that starts, as to your point, being one Metro. So not being, mode-centric. And I think one thing that will be great is having an integrated control and communication center that is all modes together and operated as such.
Bryna.
Kimmy, can you go back one slide? Maybe one more. So I guess I'm missing the, you had put something up earlier that, this one, yeah. So under service excellence, I thought that we had added the word accessibility to service excellence, and I just see that that's missing. So I'm just wondering if we can get the word accessibility back in there, so that, you know, to Phil's point, and to Patrick's point, that it's not lost along the way.
Sure. Yeah, I'll go back and check to make sure where we had landed on that last workshop. But let me follow up on that one.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Good catch. Any other comments? Hearing none? Is there one more slide? Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming and taking time out of your evening. And we're looking forward to hearing more, and we'll be in contact about
Great.
this.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you
everyone for your comments.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. Okay. If you have not had the chance to review that slide deck that was emailed out to everyone, please do so at your earliest convenience. With our next agenda item, which is a discussion about our Metro performance report. And so we have a couple of members from staff. Jordan, thank you so much for joining us. And I'm sorry.
Andrea Bray.
Andrea Wall.
Research. And co-presenting with me today is my colleague Jordan Holt, who is the Director of Performance Improvement. And so we're going to walk through our performance report. This covers the first quarter of fiscal year 23, which is July, August, and September. And just in terms of, transparency, Metro has a tradition of transparency. For more than 10 years, we've been preparing this public report on our performance that we share with the board on a quarterly basis. And we don't just report out on performance, we're actively managing it, monitoring our metrics, and using it inside the agency to inform decision-making. So as I said, this is the report for the first quarter. And on the slide here, you could see this is sort of the summary of all the things we're about to tell you, like wrapped up into a couple of bullets. Customer satisfaction for bus and rail is showing improvements in quarter one compared to quarter four of FY22, the previous quarter. This reflects the work towards addressing safety and reliability concerns. Also, our on-time performance for all modes is at or near target. And our crime rate is meeting targets with several high-profile initiatives that continue to address crime. So as I said, the quarter will explain this presentation will explain our quarter one results relative to the targets that we set for the year, and we'll discuss the actions that are underway to drive continued improvements. And you can see the full report under performance section of our public records page at WMATA.com. To improve accessibility to the data behind these performance measures, we are now providing a downloadable spreadsheet file for with expanded data sets, and that is an enhancement from our previous PDF format data tables that we included at the end of the Metro Performance Report. And the public can find that data resource at the same link at WMATA.com under public records. So we're happy to share our data and, as I said, continue that spirit of transparency. So moving on to the next slide. I think everyone knows by now that the Silver Line opens. Our phase 2 opened on November 15th, 2022. It provides a direct ride to Washington Dulles International Airport and beyond, where more than 600 flights arrive and depart each day, and officially extends our system into Loudoun County. During the very first day of revenue service, we had roughly not roughly, but it sounds like exactly 7,820 total trips. That's entries and exits to the system at the 6 new stations. We've seen these levels roughly continue through the first weeks of operations. So looking at the details of where the customers that are using these new stations are traveling, 20% of the trips start and end on the new segment. The most common starting or end points for customers at these new stations is downtown DC. And that would include Farragut West, Foggy Bottom, McPherson Square, and Metro Center. With the exception of Dulles Airport, about 63% of the trips are during peak periods, similar to the rest of our system. Most entries at Dulles, however, occur later in the day, from midday through the PM peak. And finally, the really good news is, if you extend your system, you hope that more customers come and don't shift from other parts of the system. So the Silver Line has generated new ridership. While ridership from Wheelie, which was a previous terminal, has been cut almost in half, ridership at the new stations is about 1.7 times this loss, which indicates new riders. All right, next slide, please. So this is the Metro customer experience and KPIs, and our presentation today, I'll turn it over to Jordan next, but we're gonna be focusing on the customer experience. Our report explains the FY21 results on progress via several key performance metrics towards the main drivers of customer satisfaction. And those include things like service reliability, how often was service canceled, how available or accurate was real-time bus information, how on time was our service, and then also looking at our asset availability. So you can see on there we have the elevators and escalator availability, looking at safety and security measures such as crime rate, how safe was our system in terms of safety incidents, and then employee and customer injuries. And then we'll wrap it up with crowding. And finally, to talk about ridership, I touched on it a little bit with the Silver Line, but we'll kind of wrap up how we're doing on ridership overall for the first quarter. And with that, I will turn it over to Jordan Holt to go through the rest of the slides.
Great, thanks, Andrea. All right, so starting off with customer satisfaction. This is the percent of respondents to our customer survey who rated their last trip on Metro Bus, Metro Rail, or Metro Access as within the previous 30 days as satisfactory. So you see from the orange dots that we aren't quite where we want to be yet, but the good news is that we're on our way. I will also note, I think in the past you may have seen red and green dots. We've changed, orange means not meeting target, and blue means that we've met or exceeded target. We've changed the columns so that our report is accessible to those who are colorblind. So on rail, we have seen a 4 percentage point increase from where we were last quarter, leading us to about 73% of our customers being satisfied. On bus, that was a 5% percentage point increase. And we believe both from what customers tell us, a lot of this improvement is due to more frequent service. So you see in this time period, we basically doubled the amount of 7,000 series trains that we had in service, which allowed us to decrease wait times. We've also heard from customers that improvements in satisfaction are due to improved security and safety across our system. During this period, we launched Operation Helping Hands, which redeployed officers from other work into the system and resulted in about 25% more officers in the morning, 15% more in the evening. These officers were actually riding rail cars and buses throughout the system. On an average day, they're riding 130 rail cars, 60 buses, and engaging with employees. And you'll see we believe this had an impact on several other measures in the report, so I'll reference that later on. Access customer satisfaction is going the wrong direction. So it was down about 4 percentage points. What we hear from customers is a lot of this is driven by an increase in shared rides. We had temporarily suspended the practice of using shared rides on Metro Access during the pandemic, but have since returned to it. We've also heard from customers that they are concerned about the courtesy of the call center dispatchers and the ease of making trips. So one thing you see we've done is that we've staffed up our call center. We've increased the number of agents from 118 to 131. All right, we can move on. So we're going to talk about a few kind of newly reported measures. These are measures that we haven't publicly reported on in the past. The first one is looking at missed service. So how often was service canceled or missed? And so starting from the left, you see we have a blue dot by rail missed service, which means we met our target. We had set our target to improve over where the average performance over the last 3 years. So the last 3 years, we missed about 7% of rail service, so we were aiming to miss no more than 6, and we met that goal, that target in the first quarter. You see here that when we look at why we're missing service, the top reason here is scheduled maintenance. Another way to think of that is our the track work we do on weekdays that starts kind of before the system closes and on weekends. So that's the main reason we have reduced service frequencies. Relatively small reason are when we have a rail vehicle either in offload or the fleet unavailable, meaning we're short a train or two during the day. On bus missed service, moving to the right-hand side, we missed just shy of 2% of our service this quarter. You see we don't have a target here. In part, it's because we don't actually have historical data to base that target off of. We really started combining all the data sources we need to get a truly accurate measure of that this year. On bus, you see the main reasons we're missing trips are because we have operators aren't available. It's either they're absent or we also have kind of a structural deficit there. And you see, I think we spoke at a prior board meeting about all the recruiting events that we're doing to hire operators. It's really full steam on this one. We have, as of the end of November, about 133 operators in training and really plans to recruit almost 500 more. All right, let's go to the next slide. So another new measure is looking at the availability and accuracy of the real-time arrival predictions that we provide. We are starting with bus, so you see results here for bus. Our intention is to also calculate these measures for Metro Rail, and hopefully in next quarter's report, you'll see that. So this is looking at kind of the availability and accuracy of the predictions that are consumed by both Metro's app, Bus ETA or One Bus Away, as well as third-party apps like Google Maps, Apple Maps, Transit. These look at how often those apps have real-time updates and how accurate that information is. So starting on the left, in Q1, on average, a customer would see real-time information for just over 9 out of 10 trips that they took. So we had real-time information for 92.7% of the trips. When you look at why we don't have real-time information, well, one reason is because we actually did not run that trip. So you see that 1.8% in the orange, that is the missed trip that we talked about on the prior slide. And then the other reasons we may not have information is that really it's that the GPS devices on the buses that provide the location are either not enabled by logging in or are malfunctioning. And I see I have a question.
Yeah, so do you by chance have a breakdown on the bus prediction availability on like time of day? Can you get that granular?
Yep.
Because I think I've talked this up a few times. It's like, it seems that bus prediction is less frequently available the later in the day we get.
Yep, we can break it down by time of day. We can also look at it by route. And I think that's probably true. I think as the day goes on, the chances of us missing a trip are higher. Also, one thing that can also mess up predictions is if we get really, really, really off schedule. And so kind of chances of that happening also increase throughout the day.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Yeah, so that's availability. Accuracy looks at when we provide the predictions, how accurate are those? And accuracy, what we know from research is customers are really care about, they value predictions that are made closer to arrivals. So we're kind of limiting predictions. We're only looking at the population of predictions made about 30 minutes out. And we also have a sliding scale for accuracy. So the closer the prediction is to the actual arrival, we want it to be more accurate. So if the prediction is made, within 1 to 3 minutes away, it should be accurate within plus or minus 60 seconds. If the prediction is made kind of 20 minutes from now, we have a scale of, we want it to be no more than 4 minutes before the actual arrival or 6 minutes after. And the way we chose these timeframes is we've aligned it, the Metro, MBTA in Boston has the same measure. And so we've aligned ourselves with their timeframes. That allows us to do benchmarking and comparison for that. So when we look at accuracy, we're about 86 on average across all our predictions, about 86.3% accurate. For that, we can also look at kind of, by these time buckets. And, good news, as you would suspect, predictions are more accurate when the buses are closer to stops. One thing that, we're very focused on maximizing the number of buses that provide predictions. So we conduct campaigns and coaching to ensure that all operators are logging on to their GPSs, run daily reports that look at buses where the GPS units weren't reporting, and provide that to our vendor to make fixes there. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now back to on-time performance. So we know customers know the service is running. The service is hopefully running. We're getting real-time predictions, and now we want to know how reliable it is. So starting on the left with rail customer on-time performance, we met our target there with 92% of customer trips within our expected arrival times. This reflects the rail schedules that were updated in June, August, and September that had the improved frequencies as we were able to add 7,000 series trains, as well as it reflects the fact that our service is slightly different since we're running no yellow line service. Also a note here, rail customer trips are on time if they include waits that are shorter than the scheduled headway, if the train travel time is better or as expected, as scheduled, and if all the assets in the station, fare gates, elevators, and escalators are operational, so it doesn't take too much time to travel. Looking at bus on-time performance, we did not meet our target there. It's a light orange because we were close, but we still missed it, where we had 77% of our time points delivered on time. For bus, on time means that we arrive no more than 2 minutes before the scheduled arrival time or 7 minutes late. We had actually strong performance in July and August for bus, but fell down to about 75% in September. We believe that is in part as students return to school, as people have returned to work. We've definitely seen an increase in traffic. Things were on the access side. We met our target this quarter. You do see performance slightly decreasing kind of over the past 3 fiscal years. This is in part, as I mentioned, due to the return of shared rides as well as return of traffic, but we are still meeting our target. Some things we're doing, continuing to try and reduce wait times by adding more trains. Really on bus, one thing that is definitely in our control is not departing early. So really focusing on that, particularly at terminal stations. And then a big opportunity is the Better Bus network redesign. So thinking about how we design our routes.
Sorry, I do have a question. Yeah. Back to on-time performance for rail. So there's not a specific numerical minute for early or late attributed to whether a bus is going to be on time or not? There are those other factors that you talked about, correct?
You mean on rail, on whether
rail.
a train is on time? Yeah,
Right.
this is actually looking at customer trips. So for every single possible customer trip in the system, there's over 8,000 of them. So I always like my trip. I live near Columbia Heights and traveling to L'Enfant Plaza. Every single one of those, we construct the standard. So, your wait time should be no more than 8 minutes. If you're operating, the train travel time, I think, is about 10 minutes. And then we have roughly like a minute on each end to get from the platform to the fare gate, probably a little more at L'Enfant Plaza. So that means my trip is on time if it takes no more than, 8 plus 10 plus 2, 20 minutes. Yeah. Okay. I think I have another question.
Mike.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I just have a question about the targets and the 92%, if you don't mind. I think I'm trying to wrap my head around something on this. So the chart says 92%. I look at my trip dashboard, and it shows me within that range, but the expected range, I could take Wheelie to Federal Triangle every day, and it says the expected range is between 42 and 57 minutes in my case. And I guess just from my experience in speaking to riders on the Silver Line particularly, it seems like ride times are inconsistent, and many people say that sometimes it seems longer than expected. And my metrics say that mine is at 52 minutes, which is like 10 minutes more than the optimal best time estimate from the data. So I guess the question is are we talking about the same thing? And is whether an expected range of 15 minutes, is that too wide of a metric when you're talking about a ride that's, way out, from like Wheelie all the way to the core? And I guess why the target is 15 minutes. And I know you answered it. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Yeah, totally. So what that range is that I think you mentioned was the lower range 40 minutes or 42 minutes. That is if you immediately caught the train. That's basically the train run time plus a few minutes of walking time. So that's assuming you had like zero wait time. You hit the station perfectly. That's probably the fastest you'll ever take. That's the fastest that trip will ever be. And then the difference being that 15 minutes, that's a headway, right? So we're running on the Silver Line 15-minute headways. So that upper bound is assuming you just missed the train and you're going to have to wait that full 15 minutes. So that's why we say that's your kind of expected range. It'll be rare. It means the train's really speeding if you do it faster than the minimum. And then if you go above the maximum, it means something was wrong. We didn't deliver the service that you should expect.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. And we can talk 15-minute headways is what we're running now. It's definitely not where we want to be, but that's why it's that right now. Okay, elevators and escalator availability. So this measure tracks when a unit is out of service for capital outages. That's our rehabs and replacements that usually last multiple weeks, or when the unit is out of service for a reason that requires maintenance. What is not included in this measure is from a customer's perspective. A lot of times you encounter an escalator that's just not running. And oftentimes it's not running because it was, maybe someone pressed the safety button and it stopped for safety reasons, it exceeded the weight limit, et cetera. And that doesn't require maintenance to fix, it just requires a reset. So right now, we'll admit the measure is only capturing those times that it really is under maintenance or under capital work. Recognizing that this is not a customer experience, the general manager has challenged us to try and factor in those times where it is out of service, requiring a reset or whatever into the measure. And so that requires us to get our hands on some data that we've never had before, but we do have remote monitoring capabilities for these units that tell us whether it's running or whether it's not. So we're accessing that data, and so we'll be factoring that in to the measure in the future. So right now you see kind of a dark blue available, kind of a lighter blue when it's out for capital work, and a green when it's out for outages requiring maintenance. In the future, we hope to add another color block, maybe yellow, I don't know what color it'll be, when it's out for other reasons requiring reset.
And I don't want to speak for you all, but I think when it comes to escalator availability, we all wish it was that navy blue, but at least we're thankful that the light blue is greater than the green, right? Like the light blue prevents the green from happening.
Exactly, you're stealing my thunder. That's exactly what I was gonna say. No, is you do see for both of these, the main reason right now it's unavailable is because it's out for that capital work. And you're right, that's investments we're making to make them more reliable in the future. And so really we want to minimize that all other outages requiring maintenance. And the reason that we have missed our escalator target this go around is because that capital outages is a little higher than we expected on average throughout the fiscal year. So we're doing a little more work in quarter one than we expect on average through the fiscal year. So we're just shy of our target there. Yeah. Okay, now moving on to kind of safety and security. Crime rate. So we measure Part 1 crimes per million customers. We met target for this measure at 5.9 crimes on average per million customer trips. We think about Part 1 crime in two buckets. One is crime against persons, that's the dark blue part of the bar, and crimes against property, that's the light blue part of the bar. So you see that we have seen a steady decrease in crimes against persons over the past few years, while we have definitely seen a decrease in crimes against property relative to fiscal year 21, but a slight increase relative to where we were last year. When we look at where and what types of Part 1 crimes are occurring, most of the crimes occur on the rail system, and they are mostly larceny or theft offenses. Rail system crimes make up about 2/3 of the total. As I mentioned before, kind of earlier, we have really been kind of investing in improving the visibility of our police force throughout the system, and we believe that that has, we've seen a little bit of effect here in quarter one and anticipate seeing continued improvements in quarter two. Okay, major safety event rate. So this is, for those who've consumed our report in the past, this is a slight change into one of our safety measures. This measure scales safety events to the amount of service we're providing, so 10 million revenue miles. And this is a measure in our agency safety plan. So you see that we missed target for all three modes, so we're not where we want to be here. And these targets were set to improve over the average performance we've seen over the last 5 years. So for bus, we were looking to improve by 5% over the last 5 years. Or sorry, bus was 15% and rail was 5%. And access actually was meeting where we were last year. So when we look at rail, we had 8 major safety events in the first quarter, so during the first 3 months. 3 of those were work vehicle derailments. So these were all what we call roadway maintenance machines. 2 occurred during overnight work. There was no damage and no injuries. The smoke and fire events, there was a variety. One was an electrical fire. This was at DuPont. We had a smoke in the station from a Fairgate installation, and then one customer started fire on a rail car. The collision, it's kind of a misnomer, but this was unfortunately when a trespasser was struck by a train, and then we had one gas leak in the yard. On bus and access, you see most of our safety events are collisions, and most of them are non-preventable. What that means is that when we reviewed the information about the collision, we determined that there was nothing the operator could have done to prevent it. What we are doing here to improve, in part on the bus side, we're very focused on using data to identify trends, risky driver behavior, and coaching on that, as well as looking at across intersections to identify, kind of looking at data to identify intersections that have multiple crashes and creating safety interventions. We also go and do safety blitzes. So we do safety blitzes at these high accident areas. That involves our teams out there kind of stopping, speaking with operators, kind of really drawing their attention to kind of the safety concerns about the intersection and left turns and potential speeding in the corridor. So really kind of stopping and taking stock of these risks and knowing how to address them. On the Metro Access side, we've launched a safety campaign called Incident Free in 23. This involved a multi-day summit with our contractors, as well as our safety team, as well as our control center staff, to kind of talk and align around safety strategies and actions. Next. Customer injury rate. So this measures the number of injuries per 10 million revenue miles. So again, this is scaled to the service we provide. In the past, we've scaled it to passenger trips. We've changed it to scale it to service provide to align with our agency safety plan. Mixed results here. On the rail system, we met our target. All of these injuries were slips, trips, and falls. You see most of them are on our escalator system. We did conduct a benchmarking study in summer of 2022 where we looked at what practices are in place at other transit properties around the world to reduce slips, trips, and falls, particularly on escalators. Based on that information, we're piloting a new signage campaign. You'll start seeing it in winter of 2023, aimed at mitigating these incidents. So we'll track that to see if it has any improvement. On the bus customer injury side, you see slips, trips, and we did not meet our target. Slips, trips, and falls were the largest injury category, followed by collisions. I've mentioned some of the steps we're taking to address collisions. Most of the slips, trips, and falls were due to hard braking or motion. Often the hard braking occurs to prevent collisions. So some of the steps we're taking to prevent collisions should help with the slips, trips, and falls as well. On access, we also see that collisions are the top reason. As I mentioned, the Incident-Free 23 safety campaign really aims to address some of those root causes there. All right, moving on to the next one. This is a new measure. It's really drilling down on customer and employee assaults, which is a key safety concern. Pleased to show that we did meet our target for both of these measures. And this is another measure in our agency safety plan. And our targets were set to improve upon the average end-of-year performance for both modes. You see this includes both customers and employees. So if you look at the table over on the right, we had a total of 7 employee assaults and 16 customer assaults during this period, with more on rail. We continue to do the de-escalation training for all of our operators and station managers. We do think that this increased visibility of our police force in the system will help deter assaults. Okay, next. And wrapping up our injuries is employee injury rate. So this is, we met our target, which is great because it is also a decrease over where we were last year. And you see here that our top injury type is collision related. This is kind of in line with the other safety event trends that we've seen on bus and access. So a lot of the work that we're doing to prevent collisions will also, or reduce collisions will also help reduce employee injuries. You see the next top category is stress. Quite a few of our stress incidents are related to witnessing violence or having kind of a verbal threat. And so kind of also the increased police presence throughout the system is aimed at addressing that as well. And so with that, I think I'm turning it over back to you on crowding. Or I'll do crowding. We're good? Okay, so how crowded is the system? So we're going to wrap up with crowding and ridership. So crowding, in short, has increased on both rail and bus during this first quarter of the fiscal year. That's related to, not to steal Andrea's thunder, but to the increase in ridership. Where possible, I did mention we had service changes in, I think, July and September, where we've been, particularly on the rail side, been adding service. So that has helped us address crowding, where crowding is largest in the system. And then on bus, I believe we publicly announced today that we will be restoring frequency on several routes, and hopefully that will also continue to address crowding. All right.
Okay, and now I will give Jordan a break from talking. She provided a lot of information. And wrapping up here with ridership, if you remember, one of the first slides was kind of like customer satisfaction on one side, ridership on the other, with everything else in the middle that Jordan spoke about. Ridership being indicative of how well we're meeting our goals of providing safe, reliable, on-time performance, service to the region with assets in good condition, all the things we just spoke about. So ridership in Q1 was 10% above the forecast and 36% higher from the same period a year ago in FY22, so Q1 of FY22. So if you look at overall ridership between bus and rail and access, we had 500,000 passengers every weekday in September. That's about 60% of pre-pandemic ridership. On the bus side, ridership was 55% of the 55% of total ridership is on bus, exceeding rail ridership by over 5 million riders, continuing that trend we've seen since the pandemic. And then rail ridership was 20.1 million, 6% below forecast, but 43% higher than the same period last year. So that's really great news to see that level of increase. Rail ridership this quarter returned to about 46% of pre-pandemic ridership. Metro access ridership 10% under forecast and 4% more than the same time in FY21, so 2 years ago. Is that right? Okay, sorry, 22. It says 21 here. I just wanted to note, kind of on the rail ridership side, Jordan's mentioned the word benchmarking a lot. We do a lot of benchmarking at Metro. I think we've had, last year we counted like over hundreds of benchmarking activities, some of them kind of small things, some much more structured. And so I just participated in an international rail benchmarking discussion today where one of the topics was ridership recovery. They were talking to CEOs and chief operating officers from around the world. So as I mentioned, WMATA's up 46% of pre-pandemic on the rail side. The global average is 78%, so it's important to understand, like, even though we're doing better than a year ago, we're very much under kind of the global average. And kind of breaking that down further, North America and Canada's average is 60%. That would include like New York and San Francisco and other agencies of large size. Latin America's reached a 70% recovery over pre-pandemic, Asia Pacific 85%, and then Europe is very close to almost 100% at 90%. So that's kind of where we stand. We're on the very low end of rail ridership recovery pre-pandemic. And with that, that concludes my presentation. And we can answer any questions that you haven't already asked or we haven't answered.
Thank you so much. Those last statistics about how we compare to other systems was very interesting. I do have a question and a comment. I'll say the comment and then hand it over to the group. I highly encourage everyone on the RAC to review the Q1 budget performance that was presented, I know, to the board back in November, or at the last meeting, I believe, because it will give you a really great understanding about how the revenue is related to the ridership in Q1. And how that kind of informs the structural issues that are needed to be fixed in future budgets. So please go back and look up on the website, or John can send it to you all, the Q1 budget performance for FY23. I will turn it over to the group if they have any questions. Pat, I saw you had something.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, my first comment is, wow, that was extremely comprehensive. I was extremely pleased with that. I don't think we've ever had this presentation to the AAC. John, it might be good if you want to talk to Anu. I think this would be a good overview for the Accessibility Advisory Committee because you cover so much material, bus, rail, and all of that. I'm very pleased to see that you incorporated in your key results and what you're measuring Metro Access. That's really good because it shows you have a focus on that, and what's measured is going to be improved on, and what gets measured gets done. So that was really good. Love to see if I'd love to take a more in-depth look at this report. I know you're using colors to denote a certain level of success or improvement or non-improvement. Are those your oranges and your blues and all of that, are they labeled at all? I don't see, so of course your colors may not be very meaningful to me. I'm wondering about that part of the report. Will I be able to understand it as someone who's visually impaired?
The report itself has alt text in it, so
Aren't you good?
you can read. It will tell you the summary of
Okay.
each graph. Yes, so the report itself has that.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I'd like to take a more in-depth look at that report. There was a lot in there. Very impressed. Thank you. Phil, what did you think? I don't know if he's
speechless.
Yeah, I know that's a first, but there is so much information in here that needs to be digested, and I like the fact that you had, objectives and your results driven. This is where you want to be. This is where you are. I mean, you can really work with this report. It's a great overview. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I've seen the reports when they've been given at the subcommittees, and they're really good. There's a lot of data, or as we would call it, real world data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think it would be good. It's a good education overview of where things are going, and I think that's good. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly that I think it's very comprehensive, that encompasses a lot of different KPIs. Are there any other questions or comments? I do have one on, not to skip around and go back, but on slide 8, the bus on-time performance. I know we talked about it briefly when I interrupted you all. My apologies for that, but I'd like to go back to it. That early 2 minutes, late 7 minutes for bus, has that always been the 2 time metrics that you all have used? And is that just industry best practice for those 2 times?
It has always been the 2 times we used. It is generous.
Generous, yeah.
For industry. Industry is off, quite a few are 0 minutes early. You're not allowed to be early, and 5 minutes late.
So
A standard per se is every agency kind of measures it differently, but some are closer to, as she mentioned.
So that's interesting, and again, we're just an advisory council, so I'm just throwing this out there. When you have a metric, oftentimes it should be benchmarked about the consequences of not meeting that, right? So like obviously our safety standards are incredibly high, so we have a very high standard for what it should be. On the bus side, if the bus leaves early, a little long, I don't know, but just as a thought moving forward to maybe look at reducing that even more. But that's the only other comment I had.
Brian, I have a question. I'm starting to get where I work at Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm starting to get inundated with all these kinds of metrics, and I've seen the key indicators, like you say here. One of the things that we're looking at where I am is objective and key results. So how closely are your goals or results looked at here, and what happens when you don't meet those? over, let's say a two quarterly periods or something. Is there some change in the budget, or what happens next if you don't meet performance goals?
So first, we look at them very closely. We have a
Mhm.
series of monthly meetings where we review these metrics. We have one for rail, we call it RailStat. We have a bus stat, we have access stat. We've recently
Okay.
started one at the GM and specifically COO level that we're calling ops stat. So we regularly review those, and the discussion is often if we aren't meeting target, it's trying to understand why. What do we need to do to change course? Is it, reallocating resources? Is it, a lot of what you hear in here about, Operation Helping Hands and other things that we're doing come from those discussions. So we're regularly reviewing this and trying to come up with actions. We have not tied budget to
Mhm.
results, so there is no financial penalty, within Metro
Right.
for not meeting target.
Mhm.
In some cases, perhaps we've been under-resourced, so we need more money.
Right,
We do
right,
want to
right.
meet target.
Understand that. Yeah.
So right now that there is no tie to that.
Yeah, I think, as she said, it's more of a, if possible, reallocation. We have to live within the budget we're provided. What we can do is talk about performance as we develop the next year's budget and talk about resources. If you're not, if you're missing trips, for example, because you don't have enough people, like, do you need more people? Maybe you need some more resources for recruitment, et cetera. We've been offering hiring bonuses. So it should definitely inform the next year's budget.
So I could probably offer some expertise, at least at the AAC, towards the Metro Access. That's one of the areas that we meet regularly every month, and we've been doing that since what, 1990 or whatever. So we have a lot of expertise in that area. So as far as suggestions or how to meet performance goals or why performance goals aren't being met, as a resource, AAC, particularly on the Metro Access side, could be useful. So we're here to assist if we can.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none or seeing none, I just wanted to thank you all again for coming. This was really enlightening, and forward again to staying in contact, and looking forward to you all developing the Q2 results. So good luck and thank you so much.
And not to put Jordan on the spot, but I think we had talked about this becoming maybe a regular, either quarterly or some appropriate time as the council determines, but sort of a regular update on how things are doing and what we're doing to improve. So
Exactly.
I think that would be great, John. I found this very, very useful. I mean, having all your data in one spot, measured very nicely and very well presented also. Did a great job.
Thanks. Yeah, so we'd love to come back on a quarterly basis. We also have some ideas for some feedback that we'd like from you all. We're looking to transform this quarterly kind of static report to also being more of an interactive dashboard that allows drill downs to the line level, as we talked about for bus prediction accuracy and availability. And so we'd love to come back to you with some kind of mock-ups and prototypes of what that could look like to get your feedback, because we really want it to be relevant from a customer's perspective and information organized in a way that's meaningful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You'll have a great evening. Okay. Thank you so much. That was our Metro Performance Report. We'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is the RAC Annual Report Committee Update. And I will pass that over to Mike.
Great, thank you very much. And that was a really good presentation and it's good information to have. So definitely appreciate what we just saw. So for the Annual Report Committee, we are looking at the March RAC meeting to ask the RAC members writ large if that all of you and all of us that are on the committee as well can help propose solutions to the rider concerns, or at least the main ones that we identify throughout the transit zone regarding issues. And I guess the issues and concerns are raised by riders per our outreach initiative. The RAC's proposed solutions for these issues will be included, of course, in our annual report. And to help get RAC members thinking about these issues in advance of that March meeting, we're going to provide rider feedback gleaned from the committee's direct outreach each month, just very, very quickly and briefly, so that members can hear what riders are saying to the members of the committee as we conduct this outreach. And so it can help formulate your thoughts as we go forward. And in watching the board meeting a couple weeks ago, Brian, when you were there, I think it was board member Tracy Lowe seems very receptive and happy that the RAC was really offering proposed solutions to various items of rider concern. So I think this goes part and parcel with that our mandate and what they're looking for over there. So to that, last time I mentioned rider concerns. Main thing for some reason that I kept getting from people over and over was smoking on trains and in the stations, kind of in that customer behavior kind of bucket. Here's what we're hearing now. This is based on outreach info that about half of the annual report committee has kind of provided to me. This involves PG County, DC, Fairfax, Arlington, and Montgomery counties. So in PG County, what we're hearing is so far is that reoccurring concerns are fare evaders and cleanliness on trains. Reported that one rider shared that when they rode the B2 bus, only he and two other people out of about 30 who got on and off the bus had paid for it. Now to some positives, that Green Line and Yellow Line riders, again, this is PG County. I think the ones that live in Alexandria, that area south, have probably a different view. But for this one, many of them said they were pleased to see not too long wait times, despite the Yellow Line not running. Two riders from DC were thrilled to have the Silver Line go all the way to Dulles and have to pay only about $2 to $6 as opposed to over $70 for a cab ride. For DC, what we're hearing, members of our committee, is that customer behavior and perceptions of safety involving crime are kind of the biggest issues that riders in DC have been reporting to us. And also regarding buses, heard frustration with these ghost buses. And according to this, the culprits include the X2 and 9 Georgia Avenue, New Hampshire bus stops, and the S2. And Fairfax County, this one's interesting because this is a Silver Line, Orange Line, coming from Virginia into the core and back. And a lot of it's the consistency of system operations, longer than expected and inconsistent rides on the Silver Line and Orange Line. And there's a lot of clamoring for ATO to come back. And I understand, I saw in the news recently as well, that that is something that is being worked. I think it's initially for the Red Line, but people on the Silver Line and Orange Line are clamoring for that as they kind of are sitting there very idle. We're going 2 miles per hour as we ride along I-66 or the Dulles Toll Road. And here's another one that's come up a lot, just for the edit boards or council's edification. Arlington and Montgomery County riders, this came up a lot for a while for people I was talking to, that they noted that the fare card readers are somewhat unreliable and aren't always registering their cards. And some had actually noticed in the context of fare evasion that riders sometimes try to use the cards, it doesn't register for whatever reason, and then end up jumping the gate after attempting to use their fare card. And others who have to, who don't want to jump the gate, maneuver through the crowd or to go to get to other gates to try to get, or to seek this, the station manager to try to get their card working and get into. So just something that, I don't know if it's a sensitivity of certain fare gates or what, but it's something that I think that we definitely would want to look into, or at least raise some potential solutions, since that does seem to be a problem. And however, we've talked about a lot of the concerns. The positive side of things, many people noted that, and again, Fairfax, Silver Line, Orange Line, that the system does seem to be doing better than in previous years. I think most people have kind of acknowledged that, although many said they were afraid to acknowledge it out loud because they didn't want to jinx things. So that's kind of just your basic. Again, the reason why I'm providing this to the RAC now and through each month is that we kind of make mental notes that when we can come in March to talk about some potential solutions for some of these issues, that will be in the report, and I think it'll make it more comprehensive and more meaningful and useful to all concerned.
Thank you very much, Mike. Are there any comments or questions for Mike? Okay, thank you so much. We will now move on to our next agenda item, which is a new business. There's no items of new business on my end. Is there any new business that members of the Riders Advisory Council would like to bring up? John, is there something I'm missing?
I don't think so. Oh, Bryna has her hand raised, so.
Yeah, I
Brenna?
believe that we unfortunately have a resignation on the committee that we need to talk about. Or did I miss that at the beginning?
No, that is correct. This will be Marcella's last meeting. Marcella, would you like to make a comment? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no worries. I was moving out of the living room into a quieter space in my house so I could talk. But yeah, it's been really great to serve on the RAC and be able to work with y'all on improving the rider experience. Long story short, I accepted a position with the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, and keeping my professional and personal hats separate, it was best for me to resign at this point. So I'll still be involved with transportation at the regional level, so I'm sure our paths will cross in the future.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thanks for your leadership and all you're about to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations on the new role. Keep in touch. Don't be a stranger to the RAC.
Yeah, definitely. We'll stay in touch. We'll run in similar circles, I'm sure. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of announcements, I think that I have two. First of all is the FY24 budget. That is an incredibly impactful statement in terms of the system's priorities, in terms of rail optimization, fare service, or service optimization and fares. So please go ahead and check that out, both on the capital and operating side, although the vast majority of the work that we do in terms of providing recommendations is on the operating side, just given the headway of certain projects. I would also encourage you all to tune in to some of the board of directors meetings that are happening, one of which is happening tomorrow, including the committee meetings. They are a lot of fun. You can find them on YouTube. You can just type in Metro Forward, and the live stream of those videos pop up. And it's very informative because there are a lot of presentations that are given at the committee and the board level as a whole that are very informative. Are there any other announcements or comments?
Brian, I had a couple more.
Brenna.
So, hey everyone. So first of all, thanks to everyone who's serving, and the energy is just fantastic. Mike alluded to it in following Brian's report. The board is just thrilled with the work you're doing.
Or I'll I guess take inquiries or suggestions from folks and then see what we can arrange with our chief operating officer, who was here a little earlier, but I believe had to duck out to do some other work. And then in terms of terms expiring, since you all are appointed to 2-year terms, that means that half or out of the 11 members, 10 members' terms are coming to an end at the end of the year. Or I'm sorry, let me try that again. Out of 10 members, 5 members' terms are coming to an end at the end of the year. I will be in contact. That includes some of you who are very recently appointed, and I assume that you will want to stick around since you've been here for a scant few months. And then, there are some others who are coming off the end of a full term. We have applications. I'll be reaching out to you within the next couple days to talk through that, and then we have a backlog, or not a backlog, but a tranche of applications from folks that have submitted online that we'll go through to have the board make appointments at their next meeting in January. So, if you are interested in continuing, either reach out or I'll reach out, and you can let me know and we'll talk through it. And if you're not interested in continuing and have suggestions about what we can do to improve the experience or enhance the experience, I'd be interested in hearing that too. Brian, you're muted.
Oh yeah, you're muted.
And then thoughts about, behind the scenes, kind of what would be interesting to you guys. And John, maybe you could just highlight some of the options. Sure.
There's always facility tours. I'm thinking of things like our training facilities and rail and bus operations control centers, along with some rail and bus operation simulators that we use to train operators. I'm a little hesitant to offer sort of like behind the scenes, other kind of behind the scenes stuff, like walking through a rail tunnel to see some of the work that we're doing just because of safety concerns. Meetings and or possibly rider walk-alongs with Metro personnel, transit police, station managers, bus supervisors. Some or all of those may scale better to a group field trip versus individual appointments, but I think they may both be on the table. I know it's something that Randy, the new GM, was enthusiastic about, and so I just need to follow up with Brian Dwyer, the COO, to sort of keep pushing that forward.
So I'm just curious, Emma, Andrew, Cole, Mike, Brian, anyone, what are your thoughts on those? Patrick?
I'm being silent to leave it up to the group. I do have a question, John. Is the last time I checked, which admittedly was probably 2 weeks ago, the calendar year 2022, do you know if the calendar year 23 schedule is up there yet?
I don't know, but if it's not, it can be within the next couple days. Is it up? Okay. It will be. I think we wanted to get through tomorrow's meeting, and then we'll put it up, but it's a similar format.
Because I think that is a great opportunity. Send that to our RAC members the second it becomes publicly available information. And I highly encourage, I know it's difficult to take time out of your days, we're all working professionals, But if you have the calendar ahead of time and you're able to carve out a 2 or 3 hour period once a month on a Thursday morning, so the directors would love the opportunity to be able to meet with you and engage with you. It's also a really great way to meet additional staff as well, and you become familiar with them. For example, I come here every month and I see Pat and hang out with Pat. Am I going to see you tomorrow, Pat?
You certainly will, sir.
Nice, we get to hang out tomorrow. So
Absolutely, I agree with you, Brian. It's a good opportunity. There's nothing like face to face with people, and that makes it makes for good relationships when we start working together on projects.
And if I could add, for those of you who are time challenged, and I'll admit to doing it myself, pick up some of the reporters with the Washington Post and WMU. If you don't want to, if you can't or don't want to spend a couple hours watching the meeting, understanding that's a time commitment. Though they are archived on YouTube, and you can watch them in your PJs on a slow Thursday night. But some of the reporters live tweet our meetings, and they're actually, I find those very informative, even as somebody who's in the meeting. That's one of the good things that Twitter does, is that it can sort of distill some very big concepts down to some very quick reads. So.
And Brian, I think as far as the field trip is concerned, I've never done any of the operation control centers. I think that would be interesting. We hear about that a lot on the news when things go wrong. It would be interesting to know what their activity is like in those centers and what the stresses they need to put up with and what their work demands are like.
I recently had the opportunity to go to the Rock, and it was pretty amazing. And also the training center is pretty amazing. So both, I think, could be enlightening for you guys.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I would also say that with all the rider concerns about safety, like either a ride along or discussion with MTPD would be beneficial as well.
I think a lot of that would be helpful as well as we kind of work to develop informed proposed solutions to rider issues. I think having the information about what's going on over there would be really helpful.
So John, does that give you enough to go by, and we can find a date? Maybe we can do it on a weekend or something, or somewhere where people aren't rushing around. I don't know if that's possible, if it's up and going. I mean, 24/7, right?
Yeah, I mean, our buses and trains are there's a very small window at in the middle of the night when things aren't running. So I think that gives us
Well, we
a
know
lot
that
of
that's
time.
the only time Cole rides the bus.
That's right.
Okay.
So yes, that does give me a lot to go on. So thank you, everybody.
Perfect. Any additional comments before we end the meeting?
Very good meeting, Brian. Thank you.
No, thank you all. Greatly appreciate it. I hear nothing. I move we adjourn this meeting of the Riders Advisory Council on December 7th at 7:55 p.m. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay? The ayes.